Chapter 5. Jack gets thrown around a lot. The gradual change all starts with little Hilda. She comes storming into town one morning, screaming, running through buildings in a beeline towards the smithy.
"You have to help him! You have to! He's hurt!"
Helga manages to catch up to her just as she's in sight of the main forge entrance. Hilda cries and thrashes, words becoming garbled as Helga holds her around the middle, one hand running through her hair, whispering calming words in her ear. Hiccup can hear the commotion even over the giant saw and pokes his head out the doorway, saddle still half finished on the table. Astrid and Fishlegs lean out too, bafflement written on their faces. When Hilda catches sight of Hiccup, she starts writhing with renewed vigor. She manages to slither out of her mother's grip, her poor mother trying to juggle her like an unruly wet fish. Hilda immediately bowls over to Hiccup and slams into him, tiny arms wrapping around his middle in a vice grip.
Whoa, what's wrong?"
he asks, arms flailing a bit before going to awkwardly pet her head. She's sobbing right into his dusty apron. Helga comes running up, apologizing, going to tug Hilda away. She hangs on tighter in response, and Hiccup wheezes a bit. Hiccup exchanges a look with Astrid and Fishlegs before haltingly rubbing Hilda's head.
Hey, it's okay. What's wrong?"
he asks again, gently trying to pry her off to no avail.
"I made Mr. Jack get really hurt. You have to help him,"
she cries, voice muffled. Hiccup stiffens. He waves down Helga's advances and kneels, hands going to rest on Hilda's shoulders.
"What do you mean Jack got hurt? What happened?"
he asks, trying to keep the anxiety out of his voice. He must not have done a very good job, because Hilda's face crumbles.
"I'm sorry,"
she whimpers, snot dripping down her nose, face red and blotchy.
It's okay. Can you tell us what happened?"
She lets out a few wet hiccups.
I was playing again in the woods."
Helga huffs a sigh at this, smacking her forehead. Hilda shrinks a bit before continuing.
"Mr. Jack found me and was telling me how it's not safe when we scared an adder. It blew fire at me, but he blocked it with his back, and now it's all burned and he's going to melt."
"He what?" Astrid exclaims.
"Nadders have one of the hottest flames. He blocked it with his back?"
Hilda shoves her palms against her eyes and starts crying again. Fishlegs and Hiccup turn to glare. Astrid blinks.
"Oh, oops,"
she says meekly.
"Did he bring you back to town? Where is he?"
Fishlegs asks, voice soft. Hiccup rubs Hilda's shoulders and she peeks through her fingers.
"He walked me back. He was really wobbly. I was going to bring him to Gothy, but I lost him. He hasn't melted yet, right?" "Don't worry. I'm sure he's okay. He's—"
Hiccup pauses, standing up, and holds his chin.
"I think I know where he is."
Thus starts the town-wide search for Jack, digging through every snowbank possibly large enough to hold the spirit. At first it's only them and Helga who join, her face scrunched in determination. She had stayed mostly silent throughout Hiccup's explanation, giving a curt nod before beginning her search. As word spreads, nearly all the village kids join, combing through Berg's snow paths with impressive coordination, faces thinned with determination. A lot of the adults slowly join as well, murmured conversations between Helga and other members, carrying until there's people coming out of their houses with shovels and whatever other tools they can find. When Stoic comes out of a meeting, it's to the sight of nearly a fourth of the village digging through the snow. He just stands there a moment, beard scrunching in confusion. Hiccup bumps into him and distractedly explains the situation. He just nods and haltingly asks if they've tried looking at the snow piles closer to the tree line. Hiccup perks up with an "Oh," and darts off, leaving Stoic there, scratching his head. They find him 2 hours later in a mound of snow right outside the village, next to one of the main paths leading to Raven's Point. The tip of his staff is seen poking out, the only indication that there's anyone in there. The search is called to a halt, and everyone who had been looking quickly crowds around the pile of snow as Hiccup crouches by the staff. They lean over each other, craning to get a good look.
"Jack?"
Hiccup asks, reaching out a hand before stopping. He's a little hesitant to dig the man out.
"Jack, you in there?"
A low moan is his response, and everyone leans forward a bit at the answer. The snow starts to shift. Jack slowly sits up, emerging from the top of the mound. Hiccup can hear hissing from the people facing his back. He leans to the side to take a look. The skin is scratched and blistered, bubbling in some places. It's a matted swatch of deep greens and purples, fading to pink towards the edges like a watercolor painting. The clothes along his back are frayed and melted right into the skin towards the middle of the blast. It looks, well, it doesn't look good, but it doesn't look like a direct hit from a nadder at close range. Nadder fire can melt you right down to the bone. Either he's tough stuff, or he has some impressive healing. Considering Jack's wariness around fire sources in general, Hiccup's betting on the latter option.
"How are you feeling, Jack?"
he asked hesitantly, leaning back to look at Jack's face. His eyes are glassy, a bit unfocused, face pinched. He looks half asleep, just coming back to the waking world and the pain of his current position.
"I ruined your clothes,"
he mumbles, staring at some random point off in the distance.
"What?" "The shirt and hood you gave me. I'm sorry."
Hiccup chokes on a laugh, high and a little manic.
"That's all right, Jack. I can make you more. I'm more worried about your back at the moment."
"But I like these ones." Hiccup chuckles, smiling. Of course he would be more worried about Hiccup's presence than his own blistering back. He reaches forward and cups Jack's cheek, gently turning him until he faces Hiccup.
"Let's get you over to Gothy. Get your back cleaned up. Does the snow help with the burn?"
Jack nods.
"Give me a few more hours and I'll be okay,"
he mumbles, eyes half-lidded and falling back asleep against Hiccup's hand.
"Can you dematerialize like this?"
Jack hums out what sounds like a no, vaguely.
"All right,"
Hiccup says, fond. He lets his thumb trace over Jack's cheekbones before grabbing him by the shoulders and lifting. Jack squawks in protest, waving his staff around. Hiccup can hear a few villagers and most of the kids let out chuckles at the petulant, sleepy glare Jack throws Hiccup's way. He idly ignores the look, positioning one of Jack's arms over his shoulder, gently placing his hand under Jack's other arm to keep him standing.
"What's this for?" "We're getting you to Gothies."
"I can't fly, you know. Let me go."
"I'd rather not risk you falling face first into a cliff, thank you very much."
"What happened to the whole Lord Jack thing with the reverence? Can we go back to that?" Jack grumbles, stumbling as Hiccup slowly walks them towards Gothi's hut.
"The whole reverence thing is why we're not leaving you passed out in some snowbank, Your Highness."
"I've passed out in snowbanks plenty of times before. It's fine."
"You saying that just increases my worry. You do understand this, don't you?"
"Well, you just sound like a worrywart to me." Everyone trails behind the two, watching them bicker. Astrid and Fishlegs roll their eyes. The adults look on more fascinated than anything, while the children run around the two, providing a little chorus of giggles to the argument. Hiccup shifts Jack, hoisting him up a bit more. Despite complaining about how he can fly perfectly fine, the spirit is nearly laying across Hiccup's side, eyes drooping close again against his shoulder.
"You're getting medical attention in a nice ice bath, and that's that, you little menace."
Jack snorts and idly pokes the ground with his staff, freezing a path right under Hiccup. He slips a bit before catching his footing. He whips his head to glare, pausing a moment before dropping his arms. Jack trips from the sudden lack of support. A breeze sweeps him up before he falls, jostling his back as it jerks him around. He lets out a hiss. All right, point taken," he whines. Hiccup helps support him again with a smug smile. After what Hiccup has dubbed the nadder incident in his head, he decides that it would probably be best if Jack went through at least elementary dragon training. Less so for him to become a rider, and more so to teach him how to interact with the second half of Berg's population. Or even just to identify the different species, so he would know how to stop a confrontation without it turning violent. Jack himself was hesitant about the idea at first. He'd said that most dragons don't really like him from the get-go, and that it might not be a good idea to stick him in a cage with self-igniting sources of fire. However, by his next visit, Hiccup had managed to corral him into the dragon training arena. The riders all watched from the sidelines, as well as most of the village from outside the cage, as Hiccup started teaching him some of the basics. What Hiccup quickly found was that Jack was right, at least somewhat. None of the dragons liked Jack, except for Toothless and the rest of the riders' dragons. They didn't seem to hate him, though. They seemed slightly scared. They kept deferring to him while also spitting warning shots at his feet. It's like how the terrors would react when a big dragon managed to corner them alone. It's a delayed reaction, too. At first they're all twitchy, a bit more standoffish like usual when confronted with a stranger. But then they start to sniff the air, angling themselves at Jack, like they can sense something is a little off, that he's not quite right in some way. Then they get uncomfortable and back themselves up, turning defensive, shrinking and stretching, flight or fight. An adder spits some fire straight at Jack, Hiccup bolting in to shield him from the blast. The adder takes off, clawing at the netting until it manages to squeeze through one of the holes, darting into the woods. "I don't think this is going to work," Jack says, carefully neutral. His face is blank, but Hiccup can see the disappointment in the lines of his shoulders, in the way the cold sits still around him. But Hiccup isn't ready to give in to that yet.
"No, this will work. Toothless and everyone acts fine around you. Toothless nearly loves you more than me. They're just acting like we did at first, too. We just need to tweak our usual responses. Those tricks are for us. They won't work on you,"
Hiccup says, thinking. They need to see him as a non-threat before they calm down. That's the first step. They need to introduce him in an atmosphere where that fight or flight response gets outweighed by curiosity. He needs to create that atmosphere to stop making them feel cornered.
"Let's try smaller,"
he decides. Jack stands perfectly still as a group of terrors paw the ground, giving him a wide berth as they circle. They turn to each other, grouping together in their chittering, taking nervous hops in the air. Whenever Jack so much as twitches, they would scatter, reforming like a cloud a few feet away. It's an improvement, but not a large one. Hiccup is still racking his brain when Jack speaks up. "I don't know how exactly I can make myself less of a threat here, almighty dragon whisperer," he snarks, voice light but face tight as he side-eyes Hiccup.
"Well,"
Hiccup trails off. The other dragons are so calm because they first met Jack when he saved them from a dragon hunter ship. He has a feeling that will be hard to recreate. But what about Toothless?
"How did you get Toothless to trust you enough to lead me to that cave?"
Jack's face twists out of his almost scowl, turning thoughtful. He gets a determined tilt to his eyebrow. With a stiff jerk, he holds out his staff towards Hiccup. "Hold this," he says. Hiccup pauses a second, catching up to the words. He notices the rest of the riders out of the corner of his eye, craning their heads, eyes a little wide as they stare. He nods his head, even though Jack isn't facing his way, and carefully takes a hold of the staff. The moment his hands touch the wood, a shot of something zaps into his veins, almost freezing them. He sucks in a sharp breath, blue sparks bubbling under his fingertips. Then Jack lets go, and Hiccup feels that energy get sucked away, like a retreating tide, until he's left holding the aftershocks. He brings the wood to his chest, blinking away the little spots dancing across his eyes. Jack, meanwhile, is laser-focused on the terrors, taking a deep breath before he steps forward, slowly pantomiming his movement as he sits cross-legged on the ground. He glances back at Hiccup, nodding. Hiccup looks again between him and the skittering terrors. He isn't quite sure what his plan is, but something in his gaze has Hiccup nodding in return, taking a few steps away. Jack's shoulders tense at that, but he smooths them down with an exhale, turning back towards the gaggle of dragons. They jump from foot to foot, tilting their heads at him. He lays his arms over his legs, loose, non-threatening. Then he begins to whistle. It's a light tune, happy, bubbly. The terrors chitter at the song, slowly stilling in their twitching to sit and listen. Once the song is over, Jack slowly holds out a hand, wiggling his fingers. The dragons look at one another, pawing the dirt. Then they carefully begin to approach Jack, snuffling the air. They sniff at his clothes, jumping away whenever he shifts. One of the terrors leans a hesitant head forward, nose bumping against his hand. The terror immediately flinches back at the contact, sneezing fire. Jack yelps, jerking the hand to his chest, wincing. The terrors scatter a few feet away at the sudden action. Hiccup takes a few steps forward, alarmed. Gods, he didn't lose his hand, did he? Jack, though, waves him off. He stops, reluctantly, and watches. The terror that has sneezed on him is flattened against the ground, whining. It crawls forward slowly on his belly, bumping his head into Jack's leg. Jack coos, cautiously laying a hand on its head. The dragon twists to sniff his hurt hand, licking it. It sneezes again, no fire this time. Jack chuckles. It's okay, I know I'm pretty cold. The rest of the terror circle back and begin their own investigations. They sniff his clothes, going to crawl into his shirt sleeves and under the hood he had borrowed from Hiccup. One of them claws his way up Jack's back and onto his shoulders. It sits there and puffs out its chest quite proudly before starting to nibble on his hair. Jack giggles as he tries to push the little one away. Hiccup huffs a laugh at the scene. He takes a moment just to look before walking up to him.
Well, seems like we found out what works,
he says, handing Jack's staff back. Jack takes it, shoulders slumping gratefully. There's that second when Jack touches the wood where the magic pulses back under Hiccup's fingertips. He's more prepared for it this time, and it sweeps over him, almost tickling his skin. He feels thumping, like a little heartbeat thrumming to life under his hand, and then he lets go. He takes a deep breath, puffing out the tingling in his body.
Let's bring back some of the other village dragons. See if they're a bit calmer with some terrors already on your shoulders,
he says. He's going to need to borrow some of Fishleg's notes about the approaches that work for Jack. He just knows the Viking has been diligently writing everything down from the sidelines. As for him, he knows the minute he gets some time alone, he's writing down every little thing he remembers from holding that staff. It felt alive. Is it alive? Or is it just a reflection of Jack? Is it sentient like the wind? Jack openly talks to the winds, laughing like they're sharing some inside joke. But Hiccup has never seen him talk to his staff before. Another mystery for Hiccup to ponder, it seems. There's a slow shift in the village after those two incidents. Jack walks into the forge one day, right in plain sight, straight through the front door, like sneaking around isn't a thought that even occurred to him. He's nibbling on some shortbread, and Hiccup notices his feet are wrapped. He scrunches his nose, zeroing in on the fabric. They almost look like bandages at a glance, but when he takes a closer look, the material is sturdier, the stitching different. The color looks more silver than white, with little swatches of blue weaving in and out of the work. They wrap around his feet and up his ankles, disappearing into his pant legs.
Where did you get those?
He asks, nodding to the wraps. Jack blinks, then looks down, lifting one foot to twist it this way and that, a slanted smile on his face. Oh, Hilda's mother gave them to me as a thank you. People kept trying to get me to wear shoes for whatever reason, but I wasn't budging. She cornered me yesterday and nearly chained me down to get these on. Hiccup chuckles. Yeah, that sounds about right for Burke. And it doesn't stop there either. Soon people are crowding his forge again about Jack, just not for the same reasons anymore. Instead of complaining about his stealing children, they're nettling Hiccup on when he's coming back because I have a new shirt for him, or I just finished a pot of stew and you know how skinny that boy is, he needs some meat. The shrine slowly becomes empty of gifts. The gifts themselves continue to flow, but now, instead of leaving them on the altar up on the mountain, everyone starts to give them directly to Jack, nearly overwhelming the poor man at some points when he comes flying into town. Hiccup still goes up to the shrine from time to hang out, clean the place up from dust and such. He is in charge of the building. He notices the change throughout the weeks. The offering table lies vacant, but every other part of the building becomes nearly overcrowded. People come up to hang wind chimes and little colored flags. Wooden and stone statues, varying in size and skill, cover the floor, nearly overflowing from the entrance. Someone apparently found cold-resistant flowers, too, and planted them in some pots right behind the snow-raised columns to protect them from the wind. It happens gradually, in parts, so Hiccup doesn't get to step back and see the whole picture until he ends up walking through town with Stoic one day as his father rants to him about these new changes.
It's like they have forgotten who he is. He may not be a danger to us now, but we cannot forget that the being has claws and fangs, so to speak.
Hiccup just rolls his eyes. He had started off their long talk arguing vehemently against his points, but he quickly finds he doesn't need to. His counter-arguments present themselves in the form of Burke's people. Nearly the 10th person that day comes walking up to the two of them, stopping Stoic.
Chief, do you know when Johan will be returning? I cannot find the color of dye I need.
Stoic raises an eyebrow.
With the way this devastating winter has shown her teeth, he probably won't be able to return until the spring. You know how old his ship is. Well, you need that specific dye, Björn.
Björn holds up his scarf, dwarfed in his hands.
I want to dye this, so it fits the blue Jack wears.
He turns to Hiccup.
Wait, you made his new shirt and cape? Do you have any dye left over?
He is a vat here, or even something greater. Born from ice and snow itself, and you are making him a scarf?
Stoic growls, interrupting. Hiccup has to hide his laugh with a cough. Judging by the glare he receives, he doesn't think he managed well enough.
He barely wears anything, Chief, and he helped me find one of my lost yaks. It's the least I can do. If you have any white dyes, that could go well with the blue, Hiccup offers.
Bjorn's eyes widen.
Oh, I think I do. Thank you, Hiccup, Chief.
And then he's racing away, scarf trailing behind him. Stoic stomps off, Hiccup in tow.
This village is turning insane.
Uh-huh.
They're treating him like a common boy.
Yep.
I feel like I'm the only sane one still here.
You did help Burke, Dad, multiple times.
Stoic runs a hand down his face.
You should have seen the look he gave me when you called upon him. It was barely annoyance, and he had ice shards almost ripped through the floorboards. We have not seen him mad. I do not want to know what he will do if he becomes angry.
Hiccup turns, stopping Stoic.
Dad, you once broke a tree in half with your fists because you got frustrated with some village issue.
Stoic huffs.
That's different.
And how exactly is that different?
When a dragon is angry, son, they spit fire. Even if they do not mean to, that fire can spread and take down 5 buildings just from their one moment of anger. A moment of frustration, a moment in which I lose my control, cannot cause that. Lord Jack's anger could cause worse. He could have one moment of clouded judgment and level this whole village.
Hiccup huffs, slapping his hands against his thighs.
I thought you said you trusted me with him, Dad.
Stoic flails a bit before sighing deeply, pressing a hand to his forehead.
I do, son. I just worry about the casualness in which he is being treated.
A door opens, smacking Hiccup straight in the face. He stumbles back, grabbing his nose with a groan.
Oh, sorry, Hiccup. Didn't see you there.
Hiccup looks up and sees Astrid's mom standing in the doorway. He hadn't even noticed that they had stopped right in front of her house. He waves her off.
Miss Offerson, I hope everything is well,
Stoic says, taking a polite step back.
Oh, it's been more than well, Chief. Look.
She held out a basket full of butterflake rolls, still giving off steam.
That's great,
Stoic says, raising an eyebrow. Hiccup snorts.
I can make these whenever I want now, she says smugly.
She hands a roll to Stoic.
That Jack of yours is a polite young man, Hiccup. I approve.
She chirps, shoving a roll into his hands next. Hiccup stumbles at the words, juggling the roll for a few seconds before finally catching it.
What?
He says.
Oh, haven't you seen it yet? Come look, come look.
Before either man can protest, she is bodily shoving them into the house and down to the cellar. They stumble down the stairs to the damp basement, blinking to adjust to the dimness.
What?
He hears Stoic ask, and that's when he sees it. There's a slight hole in the ground where a giant ice block sits, nearly engulfed by the shelves that are stacked on top, filled with dough and other perishables.
Because I need to freeze the dough for the recipe overnight, I can usually only make these rolls during winter time. A lot of my recipes are like that, but Jack said the ice won't melt, and it hasn't yet, not an inch. So now I can make anything I want, year-round. When did he even do this?
Hiccup asks, squatting down to poke at the ice. The coolness that emits from the block is unnatural in its consistency. Hiccup can't quite explain it, but it feels happy, bright.
Oh, the other day. He was on his way to visit you, I think. Took a big detour once he recognized me. Such a flatterer. Was complimenting my cooking enough to make me wonder who was worshipping who.
Hiccup barks a laugh at that. He turns towards Stoic and sees his steely expression. The man is practically pouting in the dusty light. He snorts.
So, why haven't you asked out Jack yet?
Hiccup chokes on his own spit, flailing a bit from where he had been taking out some melted ore. He turns to glare at Astrid as he starts to pour the metal into a mold. She doesn't seem affected at all by the look, just raising an eyebrow.
What are you talking about?
He deflects, staring intently down at his work. She snorts.
Nice try. The village seems to like him more. He's no longer hiding his presence here, and we both know you're head over heels in love with the man. So...
Hiccup whines a bit in the back of his throat, turning it into a groan. He had really hoped Astrid wouldn't bring anything up, but, well, that was like asking the winds not to blow.
He had planned on saying something, at
some point, but the more he thinks about the whole thing, the more he just wants to sink into the ground and lie there for a few months. Maybe years. Who knows?
I will, at some point. I just want to do it right.
He hedges. And he does. He wants to do it right, needs to do it right, because it's Jack. He's friends with the wind, he's seen things, experienced things Hiccup could never dream of. He has a whole season thrumming under his fingertips, and he can go anywhere, do anything he wants to do, and... Oh, who is he kidding?
Bullshit,
Astrid says, resting a fist under her chin. Hiccup huffs.
It's not bullshit.
What are you avoiding?
I'm not avoiding anything.
Hiccup.
For the love of...
Hiccup whirls to where Astrid's seated, hands clenching almost painfully around the tool in his hand.
Are you really going to make me say it?
Is she serious? He's called the village fishbone. There's no way Astrid, or anyone else on Berg for that matter, isn't thinking the same thing. Astrid's face pinches in thought, like she's working something out. Hiccup deflates at the look. She's not going to leave him alone, is she?
Say what?
She asks, less forcefully this time. Hiccup puts down his tools on the table, running a hand through his hair.
I just don't see the point in making things inevitably awkward, okay?
Astrid narrows her eyes.
Hiccup, you're making no sense right now.
Hiccup huffs.
What if he says no, Astrid, okay?
Astrid watches him turn back to his work, stiff. He can feel her glaring at the back of his head.
You're not serious,
she finally says, sounding almost annoyed. Hiccup steadfastly doesn't respond, lasered in on his work like it'll make everything go away. Astrid stands up, pinching her brow.
Okay, you're going to have to explain this a bit more because I don't think I'm hearing this right.
Hiccup puffs out a tense breath. He plants his hands on the table and stares down at the wood with a hard look.
You're really going to make me say this out loud,
he states, voice a little dead. He looks up at her, stone-faced.
Fine, here it is. Every time I think about how I want to tell him, I remember I'm me, and he's him. What could I possibly have to offer him, Astrid?
Astrid sends a suffering look up to the ceiling.
Oh my gods, how can someone so smart be so stupid?
Hiccup huffs a laugh, lips twitch downwards.
Thanks for the words of comfort, Astrid. Knew I could confide in you.
Astrid growls, stomping past him. She snags him by the arm as she does so, and before he knows what's happening, she's dragging him out of the smithy. He squeaks, dropping his tools and flailing a bit.
What's happening?
He asks, voice turning high-pitched.
I'm knocking some sense into you,
Astrid bites out. She drags him over to the cliffside, then lets go. He sends her a weak glare, rubbing his arm. That's definitely leaving a bruise.
You're blind,
she states. He opens his mouth, shaking his head at her.
I have no idea what's happening.
This whole archipelago is lucky you're such a dork, instead of some world conqueror. You have a Night Fury as a best friend, and a possible god wrapped around your finger, and you don't even know it.
What are you talking about?
Jack is so obviously in love with you, it's almost painful to watch, you idiot. Before Hiccup can retort, Astrid shoves him in the chest, hard. He teeters, arms dropping out to grab her, but she just steps calmly out of reach. Oh God, she's actually trying to kill him this time. Before he falls off the cliff, a strong gale picks up from the drop, sending him forwards until he's able to find his footing.
What was that for?
He yells, taking a few healthy steps away from the cliff edge.
Proving a point,
she says, smugly. He looks at her incredulously.
By trying to kill me?
You wouldn't have fallen. Jack's winds would have caught you, like they did. Hiccup freezes, the last few seconds playing over again in his head. He turns to look at the cliff.
What?
He says, much calmer, more confused this time. Figures you wouldn't even have noticed that. You do realize every time we've flown together, you and Toothless have basically been baby-carried by those winds? A few days ago you dropped your charcoal, and the wind literally rolled it back to your feet. Hiccup narrows his eyes, mind wandering back. Come to think of it, that had been a little weird. He'd been too busy to really put too much thought into it at the time. Berg was windy. It's not like the wind's presence in itself was weird.
Jack's friends with the wind. I'm pretty sure it has some sentience on some level. Doesn't mean Jack's asking it to help me.
He argues feebly, feeling off-footed.
He literally told you to call on him anytime, anywhere, and he would come to you. That's not... He got blasted at point blank by a natter, and literally his next visit you ask politely, and he's stepping into an enclosed cage and willingly getting blasted at by the entirety of Berg's dragons for hours. That was for safety, he interrupts, voice cracking. Hiccup, you could look at that man, bat your eyes, and ask him to jump into a dragon's mouth, and I bet my favorite ex he wouldn't even question you. He asked Gothi to keep the old clothes you gave him that got ruined. Astrid, he gave you his staff. Hiccup opens his mouth, argument ready, but it dies on his lips. He closes it, worrying a lip. Astrid quirks a smile at the look, snorting. She takes a step forward. Hiccup, he never lets that thing leave his hands. But around you, he leans it up against the wall or the corner. I know because when one of us comes into the room, he immediately grabs it again. He trusts you, Hiccup. I think it's a part of him, Hiccup whispers, eyes a little glassy, far away in a thought. Astrid quirks an eyebrow, nodding for him to continue. When I touched it, it felt alive. It felt like there was a heart beating under my fingertips. I think that staff holds some part of him in it. Astrid pauses, eyes widening a little. That would line up, she eventually mutters. Hiccup hums in agreement. Astrid looks at him again, going to prod him in the chest. He flinches a bit from the rough poke, glaring at her. Hiccup, there's no way you have nothing to offer. Take it from one of your exes. Ask him out already, or I will for you. This entire village has been suffering just looking at you two dorks dance around each other. That's not where he expected this to go when he got pulled into this conversation. Hiccup rubs his chest gingerly. You really think so? He asks, meekly. Astrid's features soften at the tone of his voice, giving him a smile. You could ask him out drenched head to toe in mud, and he would still say yes, you dork. Hiccup chuckles lowly, rubbing the back of his neck. All right. I'll figure something out. She points a finger threateningly at him. You better. I have a lot riding on this. Hiccup nods absent-mindedly before his brain catches up with the words. He narrows his eyes. Wait, what? A lot riding on? Are you guys placing bets on when I'll ask him out? Yeah, and I will win, Astrid says happily, completely unrepentant. Astrid! It's right at the peak of devastating winter, before its slow retreat against the march of spring, when Gustaf comes barreling home, a monster nipping at his heels. He had been gone for the better part of a week, and everyone was just starting to become concerned. He had a propensity to run off for days at a time as it was, but he usually popped back up around the 4-day mark. Hiccup had grumbled about his behavior a few times, but then he would return to Berg after nearly a week away himself, and began to get pointed looks from Astrid. He had hunched his shoulders and quietly stopped complaining about Gustaf's behavior. However, when Gustaf comes back this time, he's not in his usual slightly scratched up and high spirits condition. His clothes are ripped, bruises and actively bleeding gashes riddling his body. Fanghook has a chipped horn, eyes wide and wild. They're both shivering from adrenaline or something else, Hiccup doesn't know. Everyone had given his arrival their mild acknowledgement. But then they slowly saw the condition of the two, and by the time Hiccup got to Gustaf, he had to bodily shove his way through the crowd. A couple of villagers are trying to get him to follow Gothi, but he's digging his heels into the ground, head whipping around. No, I need the chief. What if it followed me? He chokes. His gaze locks onto Hiccup, and Gustaf's eyes go wide. Hiccup can see streaks of red all in the white. Hiccup, there's a monster. You have to believe me. Hiccup takes a look at him. Still dripping blood, voice shaky and hollowed, void of his usual mixture of mischief and poorly placed pridefulness. He can't help but linger on the blood, though. Gustaf, you need to get treated before something gets infected, he says. Gustaf's legs are shaking. But I believe you. I'll get a meeting with Stoic set up while you're being bandaged, okay? Gustaf heaves out a sigh, his whole body slumping dangerously to the side. He nods once and then is led away. Fanghook is restless, pacing, eyes still on the sky from where they had flown in. What could have chipped the horn of a monstrous nightmare?
Gustaf sits by the fire in Hiccup's house and quietly recounts his story to Stoic, fidgeting, hands clenching and unclenching as he taps his fingers. He had found a remote island a few months ago that he dubbed his secret hideout, apparently returning often to build a fort, zip lines, and other amenities. Hiccup has to stop himself from rolling his eyes at the similarities between the so-called super cool hideout and the Edge. When asked to point the island out on a map, Gustaf says it's small and remote enough to not be on any of the maps, instead circling the general area it's in. Hiccup and Stoic exchange a look at that, worry beginning to settle in Hiccup's gut. Gustaf had decided to visit his island again in the lull between blizzards. However, he had returned to a wreckage, all his buildings destroyed, sliced by ice and heavy winds. He had decided to start rebuilding, and that was when he had met the beast. He says he couldn't see anything except for glowing blue eyes.
"I thought it was Jack at first,"
he murmurs, voice small, cracking.
"But the way it looked at me was like a predator."
He had barely gotten out with his life and had raced home desperately. He sniffs and confesses that he made a mad dash right for Berg, not even stopping to check if he was followed.
"Well," Stoic says, gruff, "we will find out then, won't we?"
They get their answer not even a day later. A storm swirls to life right over Berg, whirling winds whipping the snow off the ground until Hiccup can't see his hand if he holds his arm out. They can hear a howling too. It almost sounds like normal storm gales at first, but it's off. The pitch would change to something low and echoing, bouncing around like Jack's voice would, at odds with the land around them. It takes one of the villagers the night it forms. Screaming is heard everywhere, like it's right behind them. Stoic stays awake that night, getting together a plan of attack. Hiccup stands in the doorway, wind peeling in through the open crack. The way it slices into his skin is unfamiliar, less gentle than the friendly caresses he realized he has gotten used to. He screams out to Jack before quickly shutting the door. It feels wrong somehow, like shouting into a void. The next morning comes, the weak grey glares of sunlight barely breaching through the storm clouds caging the village.
"Has Jack come, son?"
Stoic asks, low. He's sitting at the table, sharpening an axe. Hiccup sighs, wincing.
"No, the winds aren't acting right. I think whatever's out there is swallowing my words."
Stoic just nods, standing.
"Then we fight."
Hiccup wants to argue, but finds he has nothing to say, no other way to respond to the threat. They weren't going in blind, at least. From the similarity between Jack and whatever is plaguing them, as well as where it was found, Stoic and him had decided it was a winter spirit of some kind, if less friendly than they were used to. They can hear a shrill scream and see bright cold eyes before it attacks. They use this to their advantage, having their dragons shoot at the being, driving it slowly towards the main square. It hisses, dodging attacks within a swirling vortex of clouds that seems to perpetually surround it, going erratically for dragons and people alike. It dives for Hiccup at one point. Within the pulsating mass of shifting air it's barely visible, and Hiccup swings blindly with his flaming sword. The being swipes him across the forehead before veering away with a howl. The dragonfire suppresses it, but it doesn't stop the beast. It begins to dart between the crowd, dodging pot shots and diving in between the blasts of fire. It takes them 3 hours to get it corralled into the village square, and by then their situation is beginning to turn desperate. Most of the dragons are running out of shots, with them and many of the villagers oozing blood from sharp cold claws or teeth. The being tries to take off higher into the air, and Toothless fires off a blast. It swerves, diving down towards one of their people, slashing them across the chest in a flash of glinting white. Toothless tries to fire again, but only burps up smoke. Another dragon fires off a shot, driving the being away. The villager quickly stumbles back, his place being taken by another body.
"Toothless is out, Dad!"
Hiccup shouts over the whipping wind. He can feel ice shards digging into his gash and clenches his teeth against the pain. They have more pressing matters right now. Stoic huffs next to him, steel-eyed on the beast dancing in this ball of storm clouds around the remainder of the dragonfire. Suddenly, something comes flying down from overhead, pulling the wind with it. It blows strong enough to knock nearly everyone over, Hiccup included. He hears an ear-piercing screech, the gales around them dying near instantly. He spits out some dirt, pulling himself onto his elbows. It's Jack. He's tumbling with the spirit, the both of them hissing and snarling at one another, writhing on the ground. Hiccup catches glimpses of the beast as they wrestle, long spindly arms and large glinting teeth. The beast breaks free, scratching some ice off its body before swirling around to jab from Jack. It twists and bellows a roar right into Jack's face, a tornado of wind nearly drowning the sound as it whips snow, ice, and pieces of earth. Burke's people raise their shields as large chunks slam against the wood, chipping off splinters. Jack's mouth twists into a snarl. He plants one foot down and leans forward, screaming something deep and primal right back at the beast. The thing's wings get snatched and thrown back at him, twisting with Jack's own. The resulting gale exploding through him wobbles houses, sending everyone sprawling again. Some fall to their knees, clutching their heads. Hiccup is left with ringing ears. Before he can begin to process what just happened, Jack clenches one of his hands into a fist, enshrouding the monster in ice. The storm clouds dissipate, and a solid shape of the beast is visible for only a second before Jack grabs it, reeling back and launching the being out towards the docks into the ocean. It recovers mid-air, and Jack launches himself off the ground to meet it. They clash viciously over the sea, thundering claps of ice and wind slamming against each other. The waters far below them swirl into violent waves, the boats along the dock creaking from where they rock. Jack blinks in and out of focus, disappearing into the snow, whipping around the two to ride the gale sent his way, sharp enough to slice chips of rock off Burke's cliffs from where they collide against the stone. Then, in one moment, Jack is reeling back to line up his wing, and in the next he is sent flying down to the waters below from some invisible blow. Hiccup cries out, watching Jack's form falling down towards the churning waves. His body twists suddenly. He continues down to the water, not even trying to stop his fall. He lands at the top of a cresting wave, the entire wave bursting to ice the moment his feet touch the water. He slides down the slope of its curling head. He skates to the bottom, then jerks his staff. A ramp of ice flows up from the sea, and with a burst of wind he rockets up the ramp and back into the sky near instantly. He twists around the cyclone pulsating mid-air, twisting to avoid spinning tornadoes being shot his way. Then static crackles. Hiccup's ears prickle. It sounds like thousands of icicles snapping at once, the sound reverberating through the air. He watches, slack-jawed, as something blue begins to glow from within Jack's staff, building in intensity until it snaps like a bowstring. The thunderclap slams through the skies. Glimmering ice crackles through the air like a lightning strike, spearing the cyclone right through its center. A mound of ice comes flying out of the storm, hitting the cliffside with a screech, sending chunks of dirt flying as it skids to a stop not 20 feet from Burke's people. Hiccup leans forward, eyes locked onto the thing encased in ice before them. It looks like some sort of grotesque weasel, long spindly body writhing along the ground. Dizzying sharp claws scratch at the ice as it bucks, and Hiccup gets a good look at those glowing blue eyes, cold, dead, and glaring at its prison. It scrapes off a good chunk around its stomach, and a few people stagger back, preparing for its escape. Hiccup hears the whistling of a thin breeze and looks up. Jack lands soundlessly on the ground before the beast. He tips the crook of his staff towards the body, and more ice shoots out, resealing the monster. Jagged ice spikes churn the ground under his feet, nearly 2 feet high, pulsating and bubbling waves, angry. A line of those spikes shoot out from the ring around his feet, skittering straight towards the being, wrapping around its arms and legs, cuffing the thing to the ground. It writhes against its chains, spitting, howling, silver teeth glinting. Jack approaches its jerking form. His hands are clenched white-knuckled around his staff, those icicles churning the ground in his wake. His face is twisted, teeth clenching around his snarl. His eyes are cold, but they are not dead. They burn, some white flames flickering dangerously behind his hardened irises. Hiccup has to stop himself from taking a step back. Jack swings his staff down, pressing the crook hard against the being's throat. "Seed," he hisses. His voice is sharp, cutting through the air, ringing like war drums. The wind whips around him, swirling snow at his feet. "No," the creature spits. Its words sound borrowed, low and gurgling, like it stole a man's voice once, long ago, and this is what remains. A shiver races up Hiccup's spine. Jack's eyes narrow. The wind picks up around him. He presses the crook down harder, spikes of ice sinking into the creature's form. It whimpers. "So you want to die, then? I can do that." Jack growls. The ice slowly pierces deeper. The thing starts to writhe.
Okay, I see it.
It eventually yowls. The spikes retreat as Jack takes a step back, raising his staff. He flicks a wrist and the binds break, shards settling to the ground. Nearly the entire village flinches at that, tensing. It twists its neck like an owl, eyes piercing the crowd. Weapons raise, people clambering back to their feet. Jack, though, takes a menacing step forward, sending a wave of spikes from his feet, and the being quickly twists back around towards him. It shrinks in, long back coiling as it begins to grovel.
I apologize. I did not know that this island was claimed. I will leave.
It gurgles, claws netting the dirt. Jack huffs. I do not claim the island. I claim Burke. Anyone under Burke's name by blood or allegiance will not be harmed by you. Understand? The thing stills, puffing out a few breaths. Gusts of wind twirl half-formed around its body.
Land is claimed, not prey,
it states, voice tilting in confusion. I don't give a fuck what I can or can't claim, Jack hisses, leaning down over the beast. His eyes flash. They're mine. I don't care if you find a Burkian halfway around the world. If you touch them, I will not show the same mercy I have today.
That is not how it is done.
Then challenge me. Jack growls, low, ice sprouting in blades along his arms under his hood. There's a heavy silence. The creature falters, then hangs its head.
I will respect your claim,
it intones, voice faltering. Good. Now leave. The beast gives a curt nod. It twists back to look at the crowd once again. Its eyes meet Hiccup for a split second, and when he doesn't falter, the being pauses, holding his gaze. Hiccup considers the thing before him. There's no warmth in those eyes, just calculation. He sees the gales that churn the seas into behemoth waves, Haraldsvag's fresh wing beats swirling behind the iris, the movement almost hypnotic. It stares at him like one might consider a squirrel or a hare. Not disgust, but the look the twins would give the adults when they were younger, when they were caught torturing some poor wild animal they had managed to trap small enough that it didn't warrant their empathy. It cannot grasp why they are being protected. Then, in the next moment, it's gone, swirling into the winds, spine bending its body into impossible spirals and curls until it's enveloped in storm clouds once more, the only thing left being a faint blue glow as it races to the horizon. Jack follows the being's retreat, eyes narrowed. Then he whips his head around, face open in concern, eyes wide and glistening. Like the last few minutes of cold rage were nothing but a far-off dream. Is everyone okay? He asks. His gaze snaps to Hiccup, and his eyes widen further. Hiccup! He darts over on an errant breeze, dropping his staff as he lands, the wood clattering against the ground. Hiccup's hair gets blown back from the movement. He sees a few villagers take half a step back, eerily silent. Then Jack's hands are hovering in front of him, twitching. Oh, Manny, you're bleeding. Is it bad? How much blood can people lose again? He babbles. He flails his hands around before carefully cradling Hiccup's face, twisting his head gently this way and that. Oh, yeah, Hiccup had kind of forgotten about that scratch to the forehead. He raises a hand, touching his wound and looking at his fingertips. Jack whines at the action. There's a light splattering of red over his fingers. It's probably nothing worse than a surface-level scratch. He chuckles, airy, and places his other hand over where Jack holds his head. He meets Jack's wide and worried eyes, those little snowflake pupils wobbling as they dart between him and the wound. The same man who had brought a spirit to kneel, floundering over some minor head wound. Gods, he loves him. He gives the poor man a reassuring smile, squeezing his hand. I'm fine, I promise, he says, sure, steady. Okay, Jack breathes, thin. Okay. He twists his head, scanning the crowd. Is everyone else okay? He repeats, voice high. Because that spirit can freeze wounds, and the ice it uses can cause weird infections. If there's any frost stuck to any cut, you should get that checked out. Is anyone else bleeding? Oh God, that's a chest wound. Do you need any herbs? I can go find some. Hiccup can hear a smattering of chuckles rise from the crowd as Jack continues his worried babbling, almost talking to himself at this point. Weapons are lowered, people beginning to relax. Stoic steps forward, and Jack patters off. The man steps right up to the spirit, leaning down to catch him with an intense stare, eyes bright and boring. Jack fidgets, shuffling his feet, but holds his gaze, narrowing his eyes. A wide smile stretches slowly across Stoic's face, shifting underneath his beard. Jack quirks an eyebrow, darting a questioning look back at Hiccup, who shrugs. Hiccup is about to step in when the man bursts into a barking laughter. That's all the warning Jack gets before Stoic grabs his hand and raises it into the air. Jack dangles from his hold, nearly a foot off the ground.
The beast has been defeated, thanks to our patron's help,
Stoic bellows, shaking Jack around. The crowd in front of them bursts into cheers, people laughing at the wide, frozen look on Jack's face. Jack looks back to Hiccup again helplessly. Hiccup takes one look at him and joins the crowd in their laughter, clutching his stomach when Jack's face screws up at his response, sticking his tongue out petulantly.
We shall celebrate our victory tonight. Let us tend to our wounded.
With that, Stoic releases Jack, who stays floating in the air, before winding back a hand and slapping him on the back. Jack squawks and is sent spinning, clutching his staff. Hiccup looks on as Stoic steadies Jack before inviting him to the festivities. He sees the way Jack curls a little into himself mid-air, face open in hesitant hope, eyes shining. He looks at the powdered snow shimmering in the air around him, soft and gentle and happy, like it knows nothing of the anger he had unleashed. Like this was how it's meant to be, how he is meant to be. Dancing between laughing faces, cracking jokes, and beaming a bit too wide when hands go to pat him on the back. It's a face Hiccup would do anything to see again, and again, and again. Tonight. He's going to tell him tonight.